Elvis jumped up, went in and got this assault rifle. I think it was an AK-47 or something. And he came out, or either Thompson machine guns, one of the two, and he came out and put it in my hand. He said, Sonny, go kill Mike Stone.
So what's the craziest thing you've heard about Elvis?
Find out on this episode of LED Live.
Welcome to a special LED Live. I don't know, I think they're all special, but we're glad that you're here and joining us for the topic of Elvis Presley. Are any of you guys fans of Elvis?
Nope. Listen.
Can you sing his songs?
A lot of Elvis.
No. I didn't listen to any Elvis and was never a major fan. Of course, I know who he is, but when I saw they were making a movie about him, I was kind of curious, like what is this about, and what kind of aspects of his life are they going to highlight? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're gonna dive in and talk about. But any Elvis conspiracies you guys want to throw out on the table?
So, I've heard the one that probably everybody's heard of, and that is Elvis is still alive.
Yeah, right. It's like Tupac.
It's in his name.
They're in Cuba somewhere.
Yeah, it is. Elvis Lives.
If you rearrange the letters of his name, but it also says Evils Live.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think he's alive. I really don't.
I don't think so either.
Yeah.
But
after kind of weighing out some of the evidence, I think he is well gone.
The evidence?
Well, yes, the evidence is really packed up and supposed to be released on 2027. It was 50 years that they were going to hold on to it and then release it. So I think if you really care in the next few years, I'm sure they'll actually bubble what exactly happened to him.
It'll be all over the news.
Yeah, so it's a lot of speculation at this point, but so I want to talk about the Elvis movie specifically, like Baz Luhrmann that directed this. He's done a lot. Does anyone know any other pieces that he's done? Romeo and Juliet.
Which one?
The one with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, that one.
So he's really known for this eccentric sort of style of telling a story, and there was a lot of people surrounding around his life that we're going to hear from today that talk a little bit about what he actually experienced. I think in terms of Elvis Presley, has anybody been to Graceland? Do you even know where it is?
It's not that far.
Is it Memphis?
It's in Memphis, you're right.
Okay.
Did you know that it's the second most visited house in the United States?
Wow.
Next to the White House?
The White House is the first.
Really?
Isn't that an interesting piece of information?
Huh.
And so I think this is kind of fascinating, and the fact that this came out during the pandemic and everything is pretty impressive to begin with, because they went through crazy lengths to just make this thing happen. But let's dive into it. Okay. Have you seen any trailer or anything like that for this?
I have.
Is it documentary style or drama?
No, it's a drama style.
Yeah, it's a straight drama. But I want to point something out. Like, there's this, Elvis was very gaudy, and he had in the beginning of this trailer. Obviously, they're making this very symbolic of how Elvis. But what do you guys see on the screen right here?
Lots of jewels.
Okay, I see a lot of jewels.
Yeah, words.
Animals.
Okay, what do the words
Beauty,
say?
truth, freedom, and love.
What do you think about that?
What's the other one? It says
A life lived in fear is a life half lived.
Oh. Okay.
I do think that's kind of interesting to put on the front of a is that the theology maybe of the director? And
Okay, sorry, I'm coming completely no bias. I know very little of Elvis.
Perfect.
So
I love it. What do you see?
What's wrong with that statement?
Well, I think it's interesting because
I agree with it.
I've heard a lot of atheists say that. In fact, when you say things like, I don't live in that fear anymore. I don't believe in that fear. They're talking about religion.
That's exactly what I would have taken it. And maybe because I have a religious bias, but I would have taken it exactly like that.
But don't we say that as Christians? The peace that passes all understanding that God gives takes away fear. So
absolutely, it does.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm coming from
okay, so let's not read too crazy into it.
Perspective,
But I see a girl holding up her skirt, and it says freedom on it. I'm going to bet that, their freedom is not necessarily freedom from sin.
Right.
It's like, do what you want.
for sure.
Truth, I think, is interesting that it's a white elephant, or at least that looks white to me. The white elephant in the room is the
Well,
truth.
then everything there looks white.
Okay,
So does the
I'm not
water.
gonna
What
read
is
too much
that
into it.
word above the BZ?
Iona.
Yeah, what's the BZ?
Iona?
Oh, BZ is Baz.
And what's Iona?
Actually, I don't know what BZ is really.
What's
But
Iona?
truth, beauty, freedom, love. I don't know. I just thought this was like really a crazy image. I wanted to pause
It
on
is.
there and just see if you guys thought.
Yeah, because
Okay.
everything is intentional, right?
Maybe
So-
if
Right.
you guys in the comment section below, you guys want to do some research and dive into this, please let us know what you find out. But I thought this was interesting that they put this on the screen. All right, let's get a little bit into this. So moving on, here's a little piece of the trailer.
Our country itself is sick. That it's lost its sense of direction, even its common decency.
There's a lot of people saying a lot of things, but in the end, you gotta listen to yourself.
Red flag. I remember when I saw it, I was like, I can't believe that.
There's a lot of people saying a lot of things. Do you know kind of what he was referencing at this point?
No.
Yeah, I don't really know what I think he was referencing, but I think that's an interesting statement, just like to focus on, okay, people are all saying all kinds of different things like this, but you just need to listen to yourself. From a biblical standpoint, what do you think about that?
Heart is deceitful, above all things wicked. We can't rely
That's
on
what I was
that.
thinking.
And our main battle is with self, right? I mean, that's pretty typical. Elvis grew up a Christian, from what I can tell, and a lot of people think, he really remained very true to his Christianity his whole life. We'll see a little bit more of that and see what you guys think of that. But let's continue on a little bit.
In that moment, Elvis the man was sacrificed, and Elvis the God was born.
I'm gonna show you what the real Elvis is like tonight.
So what do you think about him making a statement that says, on that night, he saw the human Elvis die and the God was born?
Really wild. Why would someone even say that?
I mean, this is how Elvis was treated as the king. I mean, it's like you think about it, the king, putting something, ascribing that attribute to him is interesting.
It's the same with Michael Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, getting to this level of fame. I think there are people that are genuinely worshiping this person
Which
as
is
a god.
interesting because there's a family link there.
What do you mean?
Well, didn't Elvis's daughter marry Michael Jackson?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, so you have the King of Rock,
That
the
was
King
weird.
of Pop.
That was really
It is
weird.
weird.
That didn't even look like real, That just looked totally contrived, but...
On last week. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, this is just like total side note tangent, but if I remember right, Michael Jackson had owned all the rights to the Beatles music.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of musical
Yeah.
control in that family
Yeah.
as far as labels go. And
So do you agree with the statement that Elvis was literally treated like a god?
Oh yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so how do we treat that? I mean, honestly, if the Bible does talk about have no other gods before you, and the world is ascribing this kind of stuff to them, what do you do with that?
Yeah, we touched on that a little bit in last week's show, where you have these metaphors, the symbolisms and all this stuff, these words that we say nonchalantly to humans, that these things should only be attributed to God, and that's an issue.
if you believe that, though, what he said in that opening scene where he's saying that, you got to listen to yourself. Well, that's essentially what's happening is you at that point become
Your own God.
your own God, And so it's not necessarily just Elvis the God was born that night. It's everybody else who ascribed to that same theology just became a little God as well.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that he said that. I want you to think about what he said, because as we develop this thought more, I really think that we all are either little attributes of either God's character or we are little attributes of the devil's character. I just want you to pay attention to that, because I think that's really interesting that you brought that out. This is Baz Luhrmann. Baz Luhrmann is the director. Okay, He's a little eccentric, and here he's talking about when the actor Austin Butler played this part, how he got into the part. He worked really hard. I mean, this guy just literally breathed, lived, slept, ate, drank. Yeah, he like locked himself into a room with as much memorabilia as he could get his hands on. So when he's making the movie, listen to what Baz Luhrmann says was his kind of reasoning and what they were trying to get at. Listen to this.
Was study, 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 live, 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 absorb, absorb, absorb. And then it becomes Austin Elvis interpretation, because the number one thing was to make him human and spiritual. Human and spiritual.
Why is there no backlash when he says it, but when we say it, it's like, what are you talking about, spiritual?
I want to digest this a little bit. He's basically saying, I want to distill this character down so that I can show his human side and his spiritual side. I mean, anything can be spiritual. I mean, New Age, I can be spiritual. You know what I mean? Like, you can be spiritual with whatever belief system you want. Yeah. So I think it's interesting that even the director is recognizing that this is a spiritual situation. And this is like the cook. This is like the guy that's putting the recipe together. You're eating this guy's food when you're watching his movie.
Right. Yep.
So I think this is a little telltale of this. So look at this article here. Even Priscilla Presley explained why she felt Elvis was literally nearly God. I think that's interesting that she was even viewing him as that. Listen to what this article says. In her book, Elvis and Me, Priscilla gets candid about a relationship with the can't help falling in love singer. He taught me everything, she revealed: how to dress, how to walk, how to apply makeup, how to wear my hair, how to behave, how to return love his way. Over the years, he became my father, husband, and nearly God.
In modern times, who does that remind you of? Who does that sound like?
A cult leader?
Well, yeah, but I'm talking about a couple.
Oh, okay.
Well, they're not a couple anymore.
In modern times?
Yeah, I don't know.
Kanye and Kim.
Oh.
That's what she was saying. I mean, she didn't go into that much detail, but he was in charge of her image while they were married.
Very interesting.
One could argue, though, she was in charge of Pete's image when they were together.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And that was one of the reasons they say that he skipped out, because it's like she was trying to change the way I dress and like all this kind of stuff,
What's
like what I ate, my exercise routine, and
yeah.
So I don't know. I think people that are in those high profile positions like that, they probably have a tendency to be very controlling of their image because it's their livelihood, you know.
I also think it's really interesting that she's recognizing, obviously he was her provider, he was her everything. Her whole life was wrapped up in her. And isn't this interesting? Like, you know, God has created this situation where we have these little mini versions of God. And the way that we are in our marriage can actually tell us some information about God.
True.
And if he's sitting there controlling every nit and pick and thing that she's doing and this and that, right? I mean, I view God as like he has some pretty hard stances with what you can and cannot do, but there's freedom in following God. I think the devil's the one that's more or less the you know, you've got to go by his ways or, you know, he'll take you out kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of an interesting article that I found. Now, do you think Elvis was aware that he was like treated like a god? Do you think he himself believed that he was a god?
I think so. I mean, you can't stare out into a crowd of hundreds of people
screaming,
who are falling all over
mind.
themselves. Yeah, going nuts.
Yeah, you see the videos
and not recognize.
And it's just like, yeah. I mean, people just absolutely lost their mind, right? Okay, so check this book out. This was written, this guy named Larry Geller. He was the hairstylist for Elvis. I should have thrown a picture in here, but I didn't. So he wrote a book about it, and he wrote about his experience, and listen to what he says about Elvis. Elvis, according to Larry Geller, believed in the white brotherhood of spiritual masters, including Jesus. He felt connected to them. In Elvis's mind, his life was being directed divinely by the brotherhood of masters and illuminated beings, enlightened entities that have existed since time immemorial. And he truly felt that he was chosen to be here and now a modern-day savior, a Christ. The ascended masters are generally, you hear about them kind of in the whole UFO circles.
Oh, okay.
You know, people that are like ascended and you're trying to aspire to them. A lot of Eastern philosophy will also kind of have this sort of goal of person to
I gotcha.
achieve. The way I've heard it described as well is that you have this sort of new age perfect version of yourself that you're just like trying to get back to and connect to, or whatever. They call this these ascended masters, Jesus being one of them.
It's the whole New Age thing. I mean, because the UFO thing is all tied up in the New Age. It's all tied up in Eastern religion. And the ascended masters, they, like you said, include Jesus in the spectrum of Buddha, Krishna, and all these other, they feel are higher above humanity people.
Yeah. So Elvis actually was really into this kind of stuff, right? And what does the Bible say? You should have no other gods before me, right? So he's getting into all this Eastern philosophy, and of course, I'm sure people that are treated like gods are attracted to a New Age type religion, right?
Sure.
Where everyone can become a god, because that's literally how you're treated, and you realize you are actually not the god.
Right.
So you're kind of subscribing to the many gods, but the Bible's very specific to speak against that. And Elvis actually began to dress after the ascended masters.
No.
In fact, he was even designing his outfits and things with this whole kind of ascended master kind of look to it. I thought that was kind of fascinating when I started kind of diving into a little bit of that. So here's this guy, Larry Geller. This is the one that we just heard that talked about it. Listen to, he was interviewed about his experience, and this was a huge, long interview, so I won't bore you with a ton of it, but there was a little part that I thought that was very interesting, that Elvis was big into numerology. Listen to this.
Elvis was very much into what is known today as numerology. And Elvis was born January 8th. So according to the main system and books that he would read, his prime number was 8 because of the 8th of January. And so he would read a lot of books along these lines. And this was something that really was of deep interest to him.
So what do you guys think about that?
Because of the 8th of January.
Now, what do you think about numerology? What is it?
Oh,
do you know anything about it?
The Bible's totally against that.
Right. That things are happening in the universe because of numbers and things like that.
Also, what you focus your attention on, you see more often. If you're interested in a Volkswagen, you're going to start seeing more Volkswagens on the road that you probably didn't see before. So this whole thing with numerology is also a bit speculative, because if you say, oh, I want to see 44, you're going to start seeing 444 more often.
Right. So he was big into getting into martial arts. He was big into getting Eastern ideas. He's reading the books. He's paying attention to a wide variety. Now, it'll make sense why I'm telling you this down the road, but Elvis was not a saint. This guy was a pretty dirty birdie, if you kind of catch my drift. Like, he was not a nice man, even though he
said, people think he stuck to his Christian values all the way till death.
There are a lot of people that will defend him. But, so I want to show you a couple of little clips right here. Here he's talking about they got in the car late or whatever, and they're going somewhere, and they're talking about the night before, and he's talking about, they asked him if he had breakfast, and he says that he had his face in a not very nice word, and they are all laughing about it. Listen to this.
I had a hot lunch, all right.
How was your lunch?
No, they don't have sound right, man. Just picture
Watch out, Elvis. There's a mic up there.
You sneaky.
That's why I want to say no. I wanted to know.
They believe that section out right there.
Now you got to do a 5-minute monologue over this.
What a friend we have in
Oh, man. You start singing a hymn?
Right.
I mean, isn't that interesting? What that shows me is that, look, he's very different behind, what the public is thinking that he's like. And there he's talking about being with this girl and that girl, and they're all laughing. Oh, yeah, you got her last night and this and that. And then the guy goes, you have a mic in this car. And it was like being recorded. And he's like, oh, you sneaky. Then he all of a sudden changed his mode and whatever. I think that's kind of a little window into what kind of man this guy was.
Makes me wonder how he would, I wonder if he tried to stop that, like recording or whatever, or how that would have gotten out. Because you'd think, like, okay, he knows that's being recorded, so you wouldn't want that out.
From what I can tell, he was being recorded all the time. And when you get recorded, like when I worked in reality television a lot, and people are very nervous when you first get on camera. First day is pretty rough. Like you think you're being watched and all of a sudden like this. By the first few weeks into the ordeal, people will do ridiculous things that you're like, you know you're on camera, right? You know, it's like you just forget and you just keep going on with your life and you don't care at this point. So Elvis would actually fake go into hospitals just to get away from the media.
So would you say then on like reality TV type stuff, do they know and understand that about people? So they know like when they're going into a reality TV show, it's like, okay, eventually something's going to come out that is good for show business.
Oh, yes.
And so we just have to warm people up to the idea and get them used to it. We know it's going to take X amount of time, so we're going to stick with it.
Yeah. So what's crazy is they have story producers that are basically driving the narrative. So they have a particular narrative that they need to happen. Mm-hmm. And what they'll do is they'll keep circling around until those sentences are said that they can make the narrative go in that direction or whatever like that. A lot of reality television shows, if you notice, they're driven by interviews. Well, the interviews are really designed to be able to steer the conversation wherever it needs to go. And then they actually pin them against each other. So if they want to cause drama, hey, this person said this about you. What do you think about that? I go to this person, they go, hey, this person said this about you. What do you think about that? And then they stand back and film the thing and then they interview about it. So they really can manipulate where they're going with it. It's pretty crazy.
Who is doing that? Is that the producers or the ones in there?
There's a whole team,
with the little secrets back and forth?
So on some of the shows that I worked on, I mean, we had, maybe 5 to 10 story producers. That's what they're called, story producers. And they literally sit in the room and watch all the footage and go, how can we make a story out of this?
Wow.
And what can we do with this? How can we steer this? But
people who live outside of the public eye enjoy the privileges of private life. So we can sit here and look at Elvis and say, hey, he's so different in his private life versus his public life. But that's the case for a lot of people, including us here on the couches. And I think it's just a reminder. It's a lesson that can be learned without the consequences of, publicity. That we should take the Bible seriously when it says, in secret or in public, we should live a certain life, have a certain standard, and always bring glory to our God.
Yeah, I agree. And as a Christian, that's what we should strive to be. Is like when no one's watching, are we still a Christian? Like just hearing people talk like that. I remember hearing things about a particular president that said things like that, and you're like, oh wow, like that's crazy. You didn't know that he was being recorded or filmed, and you just hear what somebody says like that, and you can only imagine if that little snip is what got recorded. What's he really like? When he thinks nobody's watching. I think that's kind of the case with Elvis too. Is like I think people are very shocked and surprised at like what kind of a life he led.
Yeah, in reality, we all are living that experience, whether we know it or not. The Bible says that God will bring every work into judgment, whether it be secret or not. And so you may not think you're being recorded, but God has his records in all the things that we do, even if we think we're in private or being recorded, and that's going to be brought to light someday.
When all things are revealed.
Yeah. I love it. David said, where can I go? If I go to the heavens, you're there. If I make my bed in the depths of hell, you're there. You're like there's nowhere I can go. If I go in the dark, you're there. The dark is like the light to you. What can I do? And I think it'd be well for us, as at least that believe in God and have a moral compass, that we should keep that in our foremind, like God is always there, and he's I mean that should be a comforting thought, not a fearful thought that's like I'm getting watched on every level.
Well, what's comforting is that once you put something out on the internet, it doesn't matter if you delete it, it's out there. Maybe someone took a screenshot, or maybe it's in some metadata somewhere, but we have access to a spiritual delete button. God says once you repent, and that means asking for forgiveness and completely turning away from your sin, he will remember it no more. And so it's just like deleted from your track record, so to speak. So that's something we can take comfort in.
Yep, that's right. So to dive into a little bit more of behind the scenes, this is the bodyguards. And what I think is interesting, the bodyguards all got together and they made a little sort of documentary, or I don't know what this was back in the 70s, but they got together and they talked about all these little stories that, were some very intimate moments with Elvis and sort of like what kind of a train wreck this thing happened. So listen to kind of one of the stories that one of them was telling him.
It just went from bad to worse there for a little while.
They happen. That's,
And Elvis started talking to us about this guy breaking up his home. And he all of a sudden started losing it and saying things like that. God, you don't understand. And he's saying this and that. And then Elvis sat down and he said, Sonny, get down, get down. So I was at the foot of the bed and I got down on my knees. He said, come here. And he put his hands out. And I took his hands and he said, look at me, man. And I started looking at him. He was trying to give me suggestion by concentrating on, you got to kill him, Sonny. You got to do it, man. You got to do it. He's breaking up my family. Very low key. And I'm fighting. I said, no, Elvis. He said, Sonny, you can do it. I know you can do it, man. He's done this. My baby, my wife. I don't have him anymore. And I said, Elvis, no. And Red's over at boy said, Elvis, come on. Elvis jumped up, went in and got this assault rifle. I think it was an AK-47 or something. And he came out, or either Thompson machine guns, one of the two. And he came out and put it in my hand. He said, Sonny, go kill Mike Stone. Do it for me. Go kill him. I said, no. He had lost her and he knew it.
So wait, what's the backstory on this?
So
who's Mike Stone?
I don't know actually who Mike Stone is, but somebody that was either dating Priscilla or Priscilla was hanging out with. What I think is interesting is he was extremely jealous over her, yet this man like literally had a laundry list of women.
That's usually how it goes, right?
Yeah, you can even imagine. So, it's a sad situation, but when you're actively like engaging, like go and kill this person, that tells you something about him. And the reason I'm showing this for you is because if people really treated this like God, look at where this is going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So Mike Stone, was a martial artist, and he might have been one of Elvis's instructors. I knew he was somehow kind of like in that circle of either acquaintances or friends or something like that. And so because I knew that name was familiar. But he was a martial artist, and I think he was either teaching Elvis or maybe he was teaching Priscilla or something like that. Elvis was into karate. He was a black belt.
All right, so that's a little backstory on Elvis. We'll get a little bit more into the end of his life here, but I want to kind of transition into this movie that they created. Okay, so that's kind of who Elvis really was. You see him in front, he's this mega star. People are worshiping and adoring him. He's just literally this guy that moves with the music and doesn't care what he says. And they were literally gonna throw him in jail because of how he was gyrating on the stage, okay? So this actor that's playing him has to embody all of that together and figure out how to play this person. So I want you to listen to this conversation.
The hardest part of channeling him, is it the lip curl? Is it the hit? Like what is it? And you got to show me like, listen, I wish I could. Yeah, you got it. I wish I could do it.
Okay.
Channeling him?
That's right.
So.
She got the terminology right.
How many times have we heard this word pop up in acting?
Oh,
so many times.
All right, let me show you. This is Lisa Marie. She tweeted this. Can you go ahead and read that?
However, that being said, I do want to take a moment to let you know that I've seen Baz Luhrmann's movie Elvis twice now. Let me tell you that it is nothing short of spectacular, absolutely exquisite. Austin Butler channeled and embodied my father's heart and soul beautifully.
Okay. Interesting choice of words.
That's an endorsement right there.
Okay.
Lisa
it is
Presley.
Quite the endorsement.
With method acting, do they delve into the both good and bad? You think he can change his lifestyle to even, the
we're gonna get to that.
The women?
I'm really glad that you asked that, but we're going to get to that. What does it say at the top here?
Yeah, channels the king of rock and roll on the Tonight Show.
Okay, so obviously this is not a one-off little thing that's telling us what he's actually doing.
Right.
Okay, Austin Butler channeled the king for the role of his lifetime. Yahoo Finance even jumped on this. I thought that was hilarious.
So this is accepted language. People don't see any problem with it.
No problem with this whatsoever. In fact, in Google, I literally was like, I wonder how many other channels. Look at this. Austin channeled the thing. These are the articles that I read.
That's funny because you just typed Austin Butler Elvis and then it's like images for Austin Butler channeled Elvis.
Yeah. Right. But I just think that's interesting that people don't have any problem with this. Now, this is from Facebook, Baz Luhrmann, and he had a little Instagram post, and this is actually one of the screen tests, the early screen tests. So this was before he'd even gotten the job and everything like this. And as they were sitting there listening to him sing this song, I want you to recognize what the director even says. He says, I feel that Austin is channeling the vocal qualities of Elvis.
Oh, so he sings in this movie too?
Yeah. And phenomenally sings. It sounds like Elvis.
Wow.
I mean, if you listen to it, you're like, you turn your face away and you're like, is that Elvis? Like, it sounds like him. So do you think the demonic world knows how to replicate the voice?
Well, I think we've seen that over and over and over and over again because I think it was Roger Marneau, a guy who was worshiping evil spirits and came and became a Christian, who said that these are things that the demons greatly enjoy doing. They want to mimic these things in their pastimes. This is something they do for fun. They are so good at it, they can take the vocal identities of people and not only make it sound like them, but they can manifest like them too.
So do you think it's interesting that our parents' generation dealt with this? He was alive and well in our parents' generation.
Sure.
We know who he is, kind of, right? We've kind of semi-heard his music. This generation doesn't really know exactly who he is. It's like these demons are keeping this alive. And think about what's going on. If Satan's final masquerade is to come as the Christ, he's sitting here confusing people at who the king is.
And
Dude,
what his characteristics are.
Fascinating to me that this is coming out at this point.
Yeah, I remember that video that was circulating in our office Slack about the Masked Singer. You know, and the guy was talking about all the music that he had created to influence generation after generation after generation.
Oh, Max Martin.
Max
Martin. Anyway, doesn't matter. It was a movie, remember?
Mm-hmm.
And it was this really old guy, and he was there with...
yeah. That was
the
awful
Mirrored
scene.
Singer or whatever.
Did you watch it to the end?
I think I watched that whole clip.
Yeah, it was with the guy that played Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was basically...
Andrew Garfield.
Yeah, he was basically the devil, and he was saying, like, I'm the one that wrote all this music, all these different genres.
That's right.
Your soundtrack to your childhood, I wrote it.
And he basically talked how he was influencing, like, entire generations. So the other thing I thought was interesting about some of these Elvis trailers that they put out was... You know, they definitely used a lot of Elvis music, but at some point there's this, what I would call generational tie-in. They start incorporating all kinds of different music, right? There was like rap and all kinds of stuff interspersed throughout it. It was kind of a different way to catch a wide variety, I think.
You know, that's exactly what Baz Luhrmann did here. I don't know if you've watched the trailer, but in the trailer, he has hip-hop in the trailer. Which I thought was really interesting. He's incorporating the current generation with the old school message, okay? Okay, so listen to this. This is an interview, and listen to what he says, going back to what you talked about. Does he have to embody everything from Elvis? Listen to how he describes this.
I understand that you reached out to Rami Malek about this role.
Yeah.
What advice did he give you?
At that time, it was one, the feeling of knowing that releasing yourself from the unrealistic expectation that you can make your face his face. And so he really helped me with this, the feeling of the most important thing being your soul merging with his. And then something new happens that we haven't seen before.
If he's merging his soul, that soul isn't around anymore.
Yeah.
It's dead. Who are you merging your soul with at this point, right? Listen to this. You remember this story? We've talked about this on this show, but for those of you that are watching and maybe you haven't heard this illustration before, Jesus told an interesting illustration that says He was talking about when a spirit came into a person and he got cast out. Listen to this, Matthew 12:43 through 45. When the unclean spirit is gone out of a man, he walks about to dry places, seeking rest, and finds none. And he saith, I will return to my house whence I came out. And when he has come, he finds it empty, swept, and garnished. Then he goes, and he taketh himself 7 other unclean spirits, more wicked than himself, and they enter in and dwell there. And the last state of the man is worse off than he was at the first. Even so, it shall be with this wicked generation. So what does that mean to you when you hear that?
I think it means, so when you have, what it means to me is that when you can't clean out yourself, there's an order of operations. When you want the bad things in your life to go out, you don't sweep your mind clean first. You instead focus on what is good, focus on the Bible, pray to God, and He will come in and clean that stuff out. Because if you have an empty house, like we say in the New Age, you should, like, not we, but how they say in the New Age, I don't know where I'm going with this, but they say, empty your mind, right? Yeah. Empty your mind. Well, what happens when something's empty? According to the Bible, 7 more wicked things come into your mind. So that's what I get out of this.
Yep. I'm reminded that we are vessels. There's always a choice that needs to be made. It's for good or for evil. There's no in between. There's no middle ground. So if you're not choosing the right, the default is the bad, and that's what you would get filled with.
See, it's been that way since the beginning, though. You take the story of the man in the garden, and God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. God's spirit inhabited Adam from the beginning. He was always filled with the Spirit of God until he sinned. And then you have the separation. Now he's not necessarily filled because he's choosing to not be filled with the Spirit of God. And so for us today on this side of sin, it's a constant choice of what are we going to be filled with? Are we going to be filled with God's Spirit, or are we going to be left empty to be filled with whatever spirit comes our way? Right? So it's been that way since the beginning, and God had always designed us to be filled, right? But with His Spirit.
I think the bullet point for me out of this verse is that if you have an empty house and it's not filled, it's going to get filled, with something that you don't want it to get filled with. And Jesus is on the outside knocking on our door, right? That's what Revelation 3 talks about. He's knocking on the heart of our door. Who's going to open your heart to actually invite Jesus in? And if you invite Jesus in, you're right, Brad. He's going to clean out the clutter and get rid of the stuff. But you've got to daily invite Jesus. Come into my heart, come into my heart.
But the other spirits don't ask.
They don't
exactly,
ask.
An invitation versus an ambush.
Yeah. Austin Butler was so dedicated to his role in Elvis that he lost touch of who he actually is and ended up in the hospital after filming.
That's crazy.
Who does that remind you of?
All kinds of
Ledger?
people.
Yes.
Yeah, Heath
right?
Ledger.
They so embody these
Jared
characters.
Leto.
Well, here's the thing with Heath Ledger. I think that Heath Ledger embodied something. I think he invited something in, and he couldn't get it out. I think that's why Jack Nicholson, when he was told that Heath Ledger had died, he said, "See, I told him. I warned him." That's what he warned
I didn't know
him.
that.
Heath Ledger, the actor, he died tonight in New York. Overdose. He died in New York. Just found him dead a couple hours ago. I warned him.
And so, the fact that it's like, what'd you warn him about? I think that these guys are really embodying these spirits. They're channeling these spirits, these demonic spirits. And yes, you will go crazy and your body reacts to that. Listen to what this says right here in quotations underneath the title. You can lose touch with who you actually are. And I definitely had that when I finished Elvis, not knowing who I was.
Okay, who does that
That's
remind
happened to
you?
a lot of people, though. They lose who they are, like Marilyn Monroe. Don't know who I am,
And who else said that? It was the funny guy.
Jim Carrey?
Jim Carrey said that. He goes, "Who am I? I don't know who I am anymore."
They lose touch with reality because I think they're inviting all these entities in, right?
And so it's the same conclusion whether it's a real person that lived in the past or a fictional character?
I think it's very interesting to me that if you invite Jesus in, it's like you have this identity in Jesus. And you have this identity in Christ.
What do you mean fictional character?
The Joker is a fictional character, unless he's based on someone that I don't know about.
Yeah, the Joker is, but Heath Ledger's not.
No. So, right, Heath Ledger invited in something to play the role of the Joker. And then Austin Butler invited in, the soul of Elvis. So Elvis was a real person. The Joker is a fictional character, yet same conclusion.
Yes, but Elvis is dead, and the Bible describes that the soul is not living on. So it, whether you call it Elvis or whatever, you call it a fictitious character, they're both one and the same. They're inviting demons.
Right, and that's Ecclesiastes 9:5, right?
That's correct.
Because the dead know not anything.
Yeah.
In case someone's wondering what you're talking about.
Yep. Okay, so let's continue on. So let me play a little more of the trailer. Okay, so you guys got a backstory. I've been building up this case here to say, look, Elvis comes out, he's this all of a sudden worshipped as God. Even his wife was like, saying that he's worshipped as God. He really has this kind of dirty lifestyle behind the scenes. How is that going to play out in his music? Listen to this.
Oh, they're gonna put me in jail.
What he's saying is God-given. So there can't be nothing wrong with it.
Okay, so she said, that was his mother speaking, this voice was given to you by God so there can be no wrong in what you sing.
Dangerous.
Yeah, that's not biblical.
Okay.
Dangerous.
We're all on the same page here.
Yep.
Moving on.
Quick Bible story, when the master gave the talents.
Yep.
And there was a good way to use it and a bad way.
Good job, because they had to get even called the one that didn't.
A wicked servant.
A wicked servant, you're right, yes.
Yeah, or lazy servant.
Yep, so listen to this.
Reverend once told me, things are too dangerous to say. Sing.
Wow.
What kind of a message can you get across singing that people have no problem with that message, no matter how evil the words are? But if you actually came out and you just said those words in an interview, people would be all up in arms.
There's a trend right now. People, like millennials, are listening to songs they grew up on, and it's just now clicking the lyrics of the song and how vulgar it was. And they're like, whoa, I didn't even remember that as a child. I was singing this and there was no problem. It's the same. It's like once I don't know what it is when you're listening to music, the message, the lyrics just goes over your head and you just like, I don't know, something else takes over.
Okay, so this exact thing just happened to me with the song Stand By Me. You've heard this song before?
By who?
Yeah?
Which Stand By Me?
Good song, bad song?
Yeah, it depends. Which one are you talking about? I think.
The one that talks about when the world's falling and it's melting down, stand by me. And it's like, wait a minute, the world's falling and burning, and you want me to stand and that you're not sorry for what you've done? And I was like, whoa. Like imagining like this song, I would have never picked that, right?
Yeah.
I heard a song the other day in a store. I was shopping and I heard it come on the radio and I heard some lyric and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, I don't ever remember hearing that before. That's pretty terrible.
Right. So yeah, pay attention. So I think that this is pretty crazy that he's mentioning this, or his mom mentioned this to him. Or Reverend said this to him.
But before we go on to that, I think what's interesting, what you said, and what we kind of all dove off of, the conclusion from all those TikToks or all those shorts that you watch with all those people saying, oh my goodness, look at all this stuff that is so terrible in these songs, and I grew up singing this. The conclusion that they come to is, I sung it and I turned out okay, right? That's the conclusion that I've heard from every single one of those things. But have they? So the whole reason I came upon this message, the whole reason that it clicked so well when Scotty 10 years ago did that thing was because I had said something to a friend, and my friend said, absolutely not, that's not biblical. Why are you even saying that? And I was like, oh, actually, that was a quote from a movie.
I'm glad you really said that, because I actually just recently spoke to some little kids, and there was kindergarten through 4th grade. So, the range is under 7, 8 years old, maybe at the top. Little kid in the front row, had to be 5 years old. And I'm talking about the message that's coming out of the Minions and this and that, And the little kid raises his hand and he goes, I watched that whole movie and I'm not a bad person.
Oof.
And I was like, wow, you're 5 years old and you're already having this mentality that so what? I'm not a bad person. But the point that you're bringing up, which I think is a brilliant point, if you really truly love God, why would we delight in wickedness? Why would we delight in evil things? Why would we want our ears to hear things? Why even sing a song that says, oh, be careful, little ears, what you hear? If it doesn't matter, there's no reason in being cautious.
Because it will change you.
It will change you.
You just saying the things over and over again. If you hear them over and over again, then you start saying them over and over, and then it becomes a part of you.
Yeah.
And it will change you. It might not change you immediately, but that's how seeding works.
Yeah.
And Jesus wanted us to seed the gospel. Satan's doing the same thing through Hollywood.
And you know what's interesting is everybody is probably in agreement on this, no matter what side of the fence you're on. Because if all of a sudden we started making a musical song that was slamming LGBTQ, you would be on the front news of whatever, and they would be like, how dare you say these lyrics? Well, why? Because they're damaging to people. Wait a minute, if I say something like that, it's damaging to people, but not if somebody puts some evil lyrics in some song. That's not doing anything to you.
That's art.
You have to have the same conclusion on both sides of that fence, that literally what you listen to has to have an influence on you, or has to have a point on you. Look at the pop culture and how upset people are if you say the wrong words and stuff. But music, you get away with it. That's what's crazy. All right, so listen to this.
I'm gonna show you what the real Elvis is like tonight. If you're looking for trouble, you came to the right place. If you're looking for trouble, look right in my face.
Looking for trouble,
Did you hear
came
what he
to the
said?
right place.
I'm evil. Oh my goodness.
The embodiment.
So this is kind of some of the lyrics that he's singing. Let's just go ahead and read through some of this. Because if you don't think that this is actually influencing or affecting anybody, I'm just going to say right here, look at this. I'm evil as can be. I'm evil as can be. Don't mess around. Don't mess around. Don't mess around with me. I'm evil. Don't mess around with me. Don't mess around with me. I'm evil, I tell you. Don't mess around with me.
It's like a warning, so to
It's
speak.
like mic drop right here. Like he's telling you not to listen to the music.
Wow.
This is
pretty
why
crazy.
we can't take a look at somebody like this and say, they're the king, they're a Christian, they have all these good morals, and you see all these people, because this is really what the man is like. He's got this like crazy duality in here, okay?
Yeah.
Listen to what his bodyguard said happened to him in the end of his life.
I grew up with Elvis Presley. I grew up and became a middle-aged man with Elvis Presley, and then all of a sudden, it's over. I knew the drugs had him, and they were going to get him, and there was no turning back, and I felt sick. And I said, I'm going to write a book about my life story, and with Elvis. And in this book, I was going to try one more time to wake this idiot up. And he called me, and we discussed the book. We had a long conversation. It's on tape. And he said, well, do what you got to do, Red.
I mean, you could just see interview after interview of all these people that were surrounding around his life, and they were just like, they're so sad. Like, this guy died in misery.
They're sad, but what's crazy is they're still alive, sitting around talking about it, and he's dead. You know why? Because they were close to him, and they were like,
yeah,
I'm not doing that.
One of the guys that was in the room in here, his job was security. His job was to make sure that everything was okay. And he would wait till Elvis would pass out, and he would try to find his drugs and dump them out, simply so that he would live. And he would water him down. He would do whatever he could to literally make this guy survive, because he was literally going to kill himself. And so he had this crew of people around him at all times that were trying to help him out. What a sad existence.
If you're security, that's your job. I mean, you're paid to keep him alive.
Sad, sad existence.
But that's the bait and switch of the devil, right? Here's the glamour, but behind all of that, you see the darkness.
So I want to wrap this whole thought up of basically Elvis had a lot of inner demons that he was battling. Yep. And that was clearly apparent in his lifestyle and what was coming out, and those that were close to him, some of the things that we know of actually just from the interviews and stuff from people. But Elvis didn't start out like that. Elvis was a Christian. He really was. You look at his early life, and he had some gospel music. You know, even in the movie, they put that he was going to a revival. And the music, when it got into him, it changed him. And so I want to bring your mind back to a Bible character that music changed him as well.
Saul.
And these two characters, Saul and David, it's interesting that when Saul disregarded what God was asking him to do, that Saul was sad and Samuel was sad. But Samuel said something really interesting. Listen to this, 1 Samuel 16:14. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him. And the very next verse, it says, Then Samuel took a horn of oil and anointed him in the midst of his brethren. This is when David passed before Samuel, and he was anointing him. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward. So Samuel rose up and went to Ramah. So what this tells me is that you can have the Spirit of the Lord. For all those people that say, oh, he wasn't really saved in the beginning anyway, you know, he if he didn't choose and he went off the deep end, he wasn't saved. No, the Spirit of the Lord was with Saul. He was in line with God in the beginning of his work. And he allowed that demon to come in, and all of a sudden, how was the end of Saul's life? What was he bent on?
Killing David.
Yeah, killing David.
That was his whole passion. Was his whole thought process. In fact, his whole final movement of anything he did seemed to center around destroying somebody else's life. That's not the Spirit of God.
No way.
And so, you know, I think for all of you guys out there, we hope that you got a blessing about this little conversation that we had here about Elvis. But think about this. This is kind of a stark reminder for you. If you really allow the music to take hold, this music has the potential to change you. I mean, that's clearly being discussed in this video, even in the acting styles and things that they're doing to get in these parts and try to portray this person, merging their souls together. I mean, those are having an effect even on the actors. So how can this not have an effect on us watching these things? I really think that we should be careful what we watch, what we listen to, and, you know, be cautious. The devil is like a roaring lion seeking whom he will devour, and he just will try to entice us to worship anything other than our God. And so we want to make sure that we make God our King and supreme in our lives, and not get distracted with all these false views of this. So think about these things. Do a little bit of research on your own. If you guys got questions, please check out some of our other videos. We've made a whole bunch of videos on channeling, actors that channel. Check out some of those videos. You might find those very interesting. And as always, thank you so much for watching our videos. Like, subscribe, share this with people. It does no good sitting in cyberspace out and not getting shared. So if you really have a passion to support our ministry, we would welcome your support. We love you guys for even just your positive comments and uplifting things that you share with us all the time. We thank you guys for that. If you guys like t-shirts and you want to go out and witness, we got a whole t-shirt ministry that we have partnered with called Lightwear, and you can find that at lightwear.shop, and you can see the link in the description below. But we got a lot of cool things. It's time that we start letting Jesus shine out from us and write it all over. And we thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys soon.